The email came in at 6:04 p.m. I remember the exact time because the kitchen was silent except for the low murmur of the soup on the stove and the familiar voice of James Taylor drifting from the radio. Outside, dusk was settling over the Carolina trees, casting long shadows across the floor. My second glass of red wine stood untouched, breathing quietly beside a folded kitchen towel. The laptop pinged once, sharp, sudden, ordinary. I walked over, expecting a shipping confirmation or one of Sarah's bubbly wedding threads, cake-tasting pics, or venue shortlists. But this one was different. No subject, just her name, her personal Gmail, stark and clinical. Sarah Monroe. I smiled as I clicked, already picturing some quirky anecdote, or maybe a soft thank you for the care package I sent last week. Socks, green tea, a handwritten note. Instead, I read this. Mom, Jason and I, after discussing with his family, have finalized the wedding guest list. We've decided it's best to keep the ceremony very small and intimate. We appreciate your understanding and want you to know you'll still be a part of it through the live stream. The link is below. It should feel just like being there. Sarah. That was it. No, dear Mom. No, I love you. No, thank you for everything. Just logistics. The kind of message you send to a caterer, not the woman who carried you for 9 months and mortgaged her future so you could chase yours. I didn't gasp. I didn't cry. Not yet. But something shifted, subtle, quiet, like the creak of a floorboard you didn't know was weak until your weight found it. I sat down at the kitchen table. My tea had gone cold, untouched since I brewed it an hour earlier. Outside, the wind pressed gently against the windows, as if even nature was waiting to see what I'd do. But I didn't scream, didn't text back, didn't forward it to Ben or call June to rant. I just sat there, reading it again and again until the words no longer stung. They simply echoed. A live stream. A link. Just like being there. They'd cut me out and dressed it up in politeness. They didn't even give me the dignity of a phone call. The wedding, the one I was funding, was now a private event. $28,000 already paid. Another $32,000 queued for the week after next. I was being invited to observe my daughter's wedding, not to witness it, not to bless it, not to stand beside her in the photographs she'd frame for the rest of her life. To observe. There's a difference. One includes you, the other doesn't. Sarah was my first. I had her when I was 29, a year after my husband died on Route 9, driving home from his hospital shift. One second he was there. The next, I was walking through the house touching his coffee mug like it might still be warm. There was no time to fall apart. I had 2 children, 1 paycheck, and no backup plan, so I worked. Nights, holidays, double shifts. I skipped vacations, birthdays, sleep. Every cent I earned, I poured into them. Education, housing, instruments, heartbreaks. I was the scaffolding beneath their lives, and I never asked for recognition. That's not why mothers do what they do. But this was a message. I was useful. Until I wasn't. I opened the drawer beside the fridge and pulled out the black spiral-bound notebook labeled in gold ink, Wedding Planning, Eleanor. Page after page of receipts, estimates, dress mock-ups, vendor contacts. And at the top of the next page, March 27th, final payment, $32,000. I stared at the number for a long time. Then I picked up my pen, and I drew one clean, deliberate line through it, not in anger, not in revenge, in clarity. Behind me, the soup was still bubbling, the wine was still breathing, the house hadn't changed, but something in me had. Because this wasn't about a wedding anymore. This was about a story I had told myself my entire adult life. If I gave enough, loved enough, showed up enough, I'd be impossible to erase. I was wrong. Sometimes the ones you raise to fly forget who taught them how to use their wings. They soar and you're left behind, still holding the ladder. And one day, you look down and realize you're standing on nothing. I dumped the tea in the sink. Not because I was angry, because I no longer wanted its warmth. That night, before I turned out the lights, I called the bank. "Hi, this is Eleanor Monroe. I need to cancel a scheduled wire transfer." I didn't check my email after that. At midnight, my phone lit up with her name. Sarah. I didn't answer. I lay there in the dark, eyes tracing the shadows across the ceiling, not thinking about the wedding, not about her dress, not even about the money. I thought about love, and how easily it becomes currency when people forget it's been earned. I was her entire world once. Now I was a line item she needed to manage. But I wasn't going to chase a seat at a table I built. I wasn't going to beg to be welcomed into something that should have never considered me optional. I was going to remind her, what happens when the person holding everything together finally lets go. And that? That was only the beginning. There's a photo of Sarah on the hallway wall. She's 6 years old, standing in front of a cardboard lemonade stand we built one sweltering July afternoon. Her grin is missing 2 teeth. Her hair's in crooked pigtails because she hated when I brushed too hard. Behind her, I'm crouched in the background, holding the picture. Out of focus, out of frame. There, but not centered. That's how motherhood often looked for me. Present, but peripheral. The morning after the email, I stared at that photo longer than I meant to. My toast went cold, my coffee untouched. That frozen moment captured more than just summer. It captured a truth I'd been unwilling to name. I had raised a daughter who now saw me as optional. I became a widow at 30. Tim died on a rainy Tuesday morning, blindsided by a truck that ran a red light while he was driving home from a night shift. Ben was 3, Sarah was 6. And I was suddenly a single mother in a 2-bedroom rental in Boone, North Carolina, with grief in one pocket and unpaid bills in the other. 6 months later, the water heater broke. I bathed the kids in pots of stove-boiled water, turning it into a game so they wouldn't notice my trembling hands or tear-streaked face. No one taught me how to rebuild. I learned by necessity. I worked nights. I worked holidays. I wore my hospital badge like armor and slept in the break room when gas money ran low. I packed lunches at 2 a.m., sewed Halloween costumes with aching fingers, and learned how to stretch a single paycheck across 2 growing bodies and an aging car. I didn't complain. I didn't date. I didn't dream. I mothered. I showed up. And I stayed. Sarah was always the bold one. Loud, sharp, full of ideas and demands. A natural leader in a glitter tiara. When she wanted violin lessons in 3rd grade, I sold my grandmother's bracelet and signed her up. When she begged to go on the 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C., I picked up 2 extra shifts. When she got accepted into Emerson College, I cried in the car and opened a new line of credit to cover her tuition. Ben was quieter, gentler. He asked for less, but I gave him just as much. His first car was a beat-up Honda Civic, paid for in overtime and worn-out scrubs. When he got engaged, I helped them with a down payment on their starter home. No questions asked. It didn't feel like sacrifice back then. It felt like love, but love without boundaries is a one-way road to invisibility. By 10 a.m., I'd missed 3 calls from Sarah. I didn't answer. Because the moment I read her email, I stopped being a participant and became a bank account. And I had learned, too late, that love given without limits gets mistaken for a resource instead of a relationship. At 10:42 a.m., the bank called back. "Mrs. Monroe, this is Carla at First National. We received your message about the pending wire transfer. Just confirming, you'd like to cancel?" "Yes," I said, without a hint of hesitation. "The $32,000 scheduled for March 27th, for the wedding." A pause, a click of keys. "Okay, I've marked it canceled." "Thank you." She was polite. She didn't ask questions. Good bankers know that sometimes what people need isn't permission, it's resolve. At noon, Ben showed up. He didn't knock. He never did. He let himself in the way only children raised by single mothers do, quietly, guiltily, without flourish. His tie was crooked. He looked like he hadn't slept. I was at the sink, drying dishes that didn't need drying. "Why aren't you answering your phone?" he asked. I looked at him. "Hello to you too." He sighed. "Sarah's freaking out. She said you canceled the wire." "I did." "Why?" "She disinvited me from the wedding." His mouth opened, ready with the party line. "She didn't disinvite you. She just sent me a live stream link," I finished. "That's not an invitation." That's a broadcast. He looked uncomfortable. You know how Jason's family is. They're very traditional. I raised an eyebrow. Ben, I'm her mother, not a corporate shareholder logging in from a remote location. She didn't mean to hurt you. But she did. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. He looked down at the floor, where Sarah used to scatter her toy blocks like confetti. They're counting on that money. I was counting on being there, I said. Now we're both disappointed. He rubbed the back of his neck, something Tim used to do when he felt helpless. This is going to blow things up. I didn't blow anything up, I said. She did. I just stopped pretending it wasn't broken. He left without saying goodbye. Not out of anger, out of realization. He looked back at me the way people do when they see something clearly for the first time. Not a background figure, not a safety net, just a person. That night, I went to the garage. There was a box labeled "Wedding Things" in Sharpie. Inside were floral quotes, receipts, menu samples, fabric swatches. I lifted a small piece of ivory satin between my fingers. Sarah once said it looked like hope. I placed it back in the box. There's a lie we tell mothers. That sacrifice guarantees love. That if we pour ourselves out, we'll be refilled in return. But the truth is, some children grow up holding the very scaffolding we built and act like they erected it themselves. Some call that independence. I call it erasure. At 9:30 p.m., my phone buzzed again. Another text from Sarah. Mom, please, let's talk. This is getting out of hand. I turned the phone face down on the table. The soup had cooled, the candles had burned low, and the silence I once feared now felt like peace. Because sometimes the loudest thing you can do is stop answering. There's something unspoken between mothers and daughters, a current of expectations and assumptions that flows beneath even the strongest family relationships. You raise them with everything you have, and somehow they still grow into people you don't entirely recognize. Sarah used to ask me to braid her hair before school, even after she learned to do it herself. Yours stays tighter, she'd say, perched on the kitchen stool. She liked it when I hummed. She liked it when I stayed close. Now she sends emails. The day after I canceled the wire transfer, I found myself cleaning the guest bedroom. Not because it needed it, not because anyone was coming, but because my hands needed something to do while my heart tried to catch up. In the closet, I found one of Sarah's old college sweaters, a soft, worn hoodie in pale blue. I held it, remembering the night she came home from a Thanksgiving break heartbroken and stayed curled in that sweater for hours. I made her tea, rubbed her back, and listened to her unravel. You always know how to fix things, she'd whispered. Now, apparently, I'm the thing she thought needed fixing. Ben came back the next evening. No knock. He walked in like he always did, but slower this time, like the weight of the moment finally registered. I talked to her, he said. I nodded. And? She's unraveling. Jason's parents are furious. The venue's demanding full payment. She said she didn't think you'd take it this far. Far? I asked. Is that what this is now? Distance? He hesitated. She thought you'd understand, that it wasn't personal. It wasn't about feelings, right? I said, folding a dish towel. It was just a decision, a practical one. She thought live streaming would be enough. That's the problem, I said. Enough for who? Ben exhaled slowly. She said she felt pressure, that Jason's parents are traditional. Traditional is no excuse for exclusion, I said calmly. I am her mother. I paid for that venue. I supported her when she had no one, and when it was time to be included, I became an inconvenience. He didn't argue. She forgot who raised her, I said. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote that sentence down in a notepad, not for drama, for clarity. She forgot who raised her. It wasn't said in anger, it was said in recognition. There's a kind of heartbreak only mothers know, when your child becomes a stranger and still expects your love like it's a lifelong subscription they didn't pay for. Later that evening, my sister June called. We aren't especially close, but she'd heard through one of Sarah's old friends. She really said you can't come? She asked. She did. And she expects you to pay for it? She did. What did you do? I canceled the wire. There was a pause on the line and then a laugh. You always were the calm one. I forgot how dangerous that could be. It's not revenge, I said. It's a boundary. That's what makes it so effective. I pulled out an old journal before bed, the one I kept the year Sarah went to college. September 12. She called in tears. Doesn't like her roommate. I told her to wait it out. Sent a care package anyway. October 3. She says she's falling behind in econ. I offered to pay for a tutor. She didn't ask. I offered. November 9. Breakup. Crying again. I stayed on the phone while she sobbed into her hoodie. Said I make everything feel safe. It wasn't money that held our relationship together. It was time, care, showing up. Now she's planning a future without me in the room. She may have forgotten who raised her, but I haven't forgotten what it cost me. And I'm done paying interest on a debt no one acknowledges. At 8:55 a.m., I walked into First National Bank wearing jeans, a sweater, and the kind of quiet focus that makes people step aside. I had already called ahead to make the appointment to review a pending transfer. The branch manager, Carla, met me at the front with a kind smile. She'd helped me before with Sarah's college fund, back when I was trying to make every dollar stretch just far enough to cover dorm sheets and textbooks. "Morning, Mrs. Monroe," she said, guiding me into her glass-walled office. "You're here about the transfer?" "Yes," I said, taking a seat. "The wedding one. I need to make sure it stays canceled." She tapped her keyboard. "The $32,000 that was scheduled for the 27th? That's the one." Carla hesitated. "It's marked as canceled, but the merchant contacted us this morning asking about it. Apparently they were expecting it before close of business." "I'm sure they were," I said calmly, "but that money's staying with me." She nodded, not asking why. Good bankers know better. What I didn't say, but thought loud and clear, was that no one should be able to use your love to write checks you never approved, especially not family. Back in the car, I sat in the parking lot and watched the steady traffic pass. Parents in SUVs, college kids with coffees, retirees out for morning walks. I used to imagine this time of my life would be full of peace and warm Saturdays, brunch with my kids, phone calls just to check in, birthdays remembered without reminders. Instead, I'd been disinvited from a wedding I was funding and left to piece myself back together from a betrayal that hadn't even been acknowledged. The truth is, I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was done. Done letting guilt dress up as gratitude. Done pretending silence was grace. Done giving when I wasn't even considered part of the head count. At noon, Sarah finally called again. I let it go to voicemail. Her text came seconds later. "We're trying to resolve this, but need to know if you'll reinstate the payment. Jason's parents are pushing back hard. Please respond." Then another, "Mom, please don't do this. It's not fair to everyone else." I read it 3 times before deleting it. They were only willing to talk when the money didn't arrive. Not when the email went out. Not when I was removed from the guest list. Not when I was turned into a spectator. It wasn't personal to them until it cost them something. That's the difference between regret and remorse. At 3 p.m., Ben showed up again. This time he knocked. I opened the door slowly, taking in the tired look on his face, the half-buttoned collar, the worry in his eyes. "They're spiraling," he said before I could speak. "Jason's parents are threatening to cancel the wedding contract with the planner. Sarah's crying. They don't know what to do." I leaned against the doorframe. "And what do they want from me?" "They want you to reconsider. Maybe just send half. Maybe let the transfer go through and talk after." "No." He blinked. "No? No, Ben. Not this time." He looked genuinely stunned. "But this affects everyone." "Not everyone," I said. "Just the ones who made a decision without me and thought I'd pay for it anyway." He exhaled slowly. "You've always been the one who fixes things." Maybe that's the problem. After he left, I sat in the living room and pulled out the wedding file from the drawer under the TV. A thick manila folder, stuffed with swatches, receipts, timelines, florist quotes. All of it carefully tracked, carefully funded. Every signature and wire done with love, with belief, with the blind trust that my presence at the event was so obvious it didn't need to be stated. Apparently, it did. I pulled out the cover sheet I'd written 6 months ago, Sarah and Jason, wedding plan, budget managed by Mom, final payment. Due March 27th. Notes: excited, nervous, hopeful. I crossed out the word hopeful. By evening, the sun dipped below the hills, casting long shadows across my porch. The same porch where Sarah used to sit in my lap while we watched fireflies. The same porch I decorated every fall with mums and pumpkins, hoping the kids would visit more often if everything looked like a Hallmark movie. Now it was just me, and strangely, I wasn't lonely. I was free. The word guest is supposed to mean something. It implies welcome, inclusion, warmth. But when I saw how easily I'd been left off the wedding guest list, the one I'd helped build, fund, and protect, I realized that to Sarah and Jason, guest just meant optional, and I was no longer necessary. No seat at the ceremony, no placeholder at the reception, no line item in the spreadsheet, not even a call. Just a quiet removal. I wasn't told I was out. I discovered it by accident. 2 days after I canceled the final $32,000 wire, I opened the wedding website out of habit. I still had the link bookmarked from when Sarah first sent it in October. Back then, she'd wanted me to review the Mother of the Bride section on the About page and double-check the travel info for Jason's relatives. "We'll need to book a few hotel blocks," she'd said. "Can you take care of that?" Of course I had. Now, the site had changed. Her bio was rewritten. My name was gone. The timeline had been updated. And at the very bottom of the FAQ section, this line appeared in delicate italic script. Due to space limitations, only select guests will attend in person. A live stream link will be provided. That's all I was now. An other. A non-guest. A person on the outside of an event I made possible. I clicked off the site before I could scroll further. I didn't want to see more edits. Every change on that page was a cut to the bone. I spent the next hour walking through my own house like a stranger. The office, where I'd kept a detailed folder of Sarah's wedding invoices. The hallway closet, where the boxed-up decorations I'd picked up last fall were still sitting, twine lanterns, ivory candles, and a hand-lettered welcome sign I'd ordered from a local craftswoman. Each item felt like a lie. I had given with love, and they had taken without care. On the kitchen counter, a stack of RSVP envelopes sat untouched. Some of them were hand-addressed by me. I flipped through one, recognizing the handwriting of Jason's cousin from Savannah. She'd written, "Can't wait to meet you, Mrs. Monroe." That was before I became inconvenient. At 2:41 p.m., Sarah texted again. "Why is the florist asking me about final approvals? I thought you were handling that." I didn't respond. "Mom, this isn't funny." Then, after another 15 minutes, "Are you seriously ghosting me?" Ghosting. That word stuck in my mind like a splinter. Is that what she thought this was? A tantrum? An emotional game? Because if so, she didn't know me at all. This wasn't silence for effect. This was release. When Ben called later that evening, I picked up. I was making soup and didn't want to hear another voicemail. "Hey," he said quietly, "things are rough." "Define rough," I replied, stirring the pot. "The planner quit," he said. "Said she doesn't work well in panic mode. Jason's parents are threatening to postpone if everything's not resolved by the end of the week." "Sounds like a management issue," I said. He sighed. "You know Sarah didn't mean it the way it came across." "She disinvited me from a wedding I paid for, Ben. She asked you to watch online." "Same thing." There was silence. "I'm not asking you to send money," he said. "I'm just saying, maybe you could talk to her. This is spiraling." She had a chance to talk. She used it to send me a live stream link. After we hung up, I sat on the porch with a blanket and a cup of mint tea, watching the last light settle over the hills. The wind was calm, the silence deep. I thought about the word guest again. Sarah had once thrown me a surprise birthday dinner when she was in high school, invited my work friends, made a carrot cake from scratch, even gave a speech. My mom isn't just a guest of honor. she'd said. "She's the reason I have anything to celebrate." I believed her then. Now I was a live stream viewer, not a parent, not a guest, not even an afterthought, because afterthoughts at least get mentioned. Darlene, my neighbor, stopped by just after sunset with a Tupperware of chili and a soft look in her eyes. She'd clearly heard something. "I'm not trying to pry," she said, "but if you ever want to talk?" I smiled and opened the door wider. "Come in." We sat at my kitchen table, and I told her everything, without drama, without spin, just facts. The email, the removal, the money, the silence, the absence. When I finished, she said, "You didn't lose anything. You finally saw it clearly." And I nodded, because that was the hardest part, not the exclusion, but the clarity. Before bed, I checked Sarah's wedding site one more time. The RSVP button had been disabled, the countdown clock still ticked toward the date, and the same italic sentence stared back at me: "Select guests only. Livestream link available." They never removed the line, but I had removed myself from their plans, their control, their expectations. And that changed everything. There were 12 messages waiting on my phone when I woke up Thursday morning. 4 from Sarah, 2 from Ben, 1 from Jason's mother somehow. And the rest, voicemails, texts, missed calls, like a blaring siren trying to yank me back into a story I no longer wanted to be written into. But I didn't touch the phone. I let it buzz and blink beside my coffee cup while I buttered toast and read the local paper like any other morning. It turns out when a mother finally stops replying, the world notices. And I was done replying. Sarah's first message came just after midnight. "I'm trying to fix this. Please don't make it worse." Then another at 2:13 a.m. "The florist says everything's on hold. Mom, please." By 4:06 a.m., the tone had shifted. "You're acting like I'm your enemy. Is that really how you want to remember this?" No apology, no accountability, just panic dressed up as concern. I didn't respond. I didn't even open them fully. The truth is, silence has a weight all its own. And when you've spent decades as the one who always answered, the one who always picked up, the one who smoothed over tension with a soft voice and a warm casserole, not answering becomes louder than a scream. At 10:24 a.m., Ben called. I answered, more out of habit than interest. "She's a wreck," he said. "Jason's mom called you? Seriously?" "She did. Left a voicemail." "What did she say?" "That I was being unreasonable. That family should rise above drama. That I'm risking Sarah's future over a misunderstanding." Ben groaned. "Unbelievable." "She didn't even say hello," I said. "Just started talking." "Why are they all treating you like the villain?" "Because villains don't write checks," I said. "Mothers do, and once I stopped being useful, I became an obstacle." He was quiet for a long time. "I get it now," he finally said. "I don't like it, but I see it." The florist emailed me again around noon, asking if I still planned to attend the final walkthrough for the reception layout. I politely declined and suggested she redirect all communication to Sarah. I didn't owe anyone a frantic explanation. I didn't owe anyone anything. That's what happens when messages are sent without meaning, and love is confused with leverage. You pull back, you hold still, you stop giving answers until the right questions are asked. By mid-afternoon, the weather had turned warm, an unseasonable burst of Carolina sun. I went for a walk, past the small pond at the end of my street, past the grocery store where I used to bring Sarah for after-school snacks. She used to run down the cereal aisle, tossing boxes into the cart while I pretended to protest. There had been years, many of them, when her world revolved around me, when every scraped knee, every anxious moment, every late-night decision brought her back to the woman who made things right. But she'd outgrown that version of me. Or maybe she just chose not to remember her. Back home, I found an envelope on my porch, handwritten, no return address. I opened it carefully, half expecting it to be a final bill or a petty letter from Jason's family. But it wasn't. Inside was a card. No glitter, no flowers, just soft ivory paper with slanted cursive writing. "I don't know what happened, but I know who you are. You taught her how to be strong, now it's your turn. With love, Grace. Grace had been Sarah's best friend since grade school. They drifted apart after college, but she'd always been thoughtful, always observant. And somehow, even from the outside, she had seen the truth. That night, I turned my phone off entirely, powered it down and placed it in the drawer next to my bed. For the first time in over a week, I slept through the night. No buzzes, no blinking, no midnight guilt trip wrapped in a text. Just stillness. And it was beautiful. The next morning, Ben stopped by. No tie. Just jeans, a wrinkled shirt, and the look of someone who'd been rethinking things. I told her to stop texting you, he said, sitting at the kitchen table. I told her if she wanted anything real from you, she needed to say something real. Thank you. She didn't like it, but she didn't fight it either. Good. She's scared, Mom. So am I. He looked up, surprised. I'm scared I raised someone who doesn't see me unless I'm doing something for her, I said. I'm scared that this is the story we end up telling about each other. Ben leaned forward. Then tell a different one. I smiled. That's exactly what I'm doing. Sibling loyalty is supposed to hold when everything else falls apart. That's the idea, the fallback, the bond built through shared childhoods, whispered secrets, hand-me-downs, and scraped knees. But loyalty built on uneven ground doesn't survive long when the pressure starts to rise. Ben had always been the peacekeeper, quieter than Sarah, more sensitive, less prone to center stage. He'd grown up watching me work night shifts, eating microwave dinners, and listening to Sarah dominate the room. He never resented her, not outwardly. He just stepped back and let her have the spotlight. But now, the stage she'd stolen from me was collapsing, and Ben was finally deciding where to stand. He came by Saturday afternoon with a look I hadn't seen in him since he was a teenager, tired, wound up, and carrying something he didn't know how to say. Coffee? I asked, already pouring him a mug. He nodded. Thanks. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table I'd bought secondhand after Tim died, where we once did homework and sorted coupons and built science projects out of tinfoil and paper clips. I talked to her, Ben said. My eyes didn't leave my cup. And? She doesn't get it, Mom. I know. She thinks this is about punishment. I looked up. It's not. I know that, he said quickly. I do, but she won't hear it. She's stuck in her own spiral. I raised her better than that, I said, almost to myself. You raised us both better than this, he said, voice low. But somewhere along the way, the scales tipped. Ben told me Sarah had broken down crying the night before. Jason's parents were furious, the wedding planner was ghosting them, and vendors were demanding final payments or pulling out. Jason had stopped talking much at all. She said she feels like she's drowning, Ben said. So she wants me to throw her a rope made of money, I replied. He didn't laugh. He didn't argue. He just looked down at his coffee like it might reveal a better answer than any of us had found so far. I tried to tell her, he said, that this wasn't about the wedding, that it was about respect, about family, about how she handled it. And what did she say? She said I was just siding with you. And are you? He looked at me then, really looked. I'm trying to side with what's right. That night he went to Sarah's condo alone. He didn't tell me exactly what happened, just that it was messy, but I found out more than he realized when I opened the door the next morning and found a small envelope lying at my feet. It was torn at the corner, like it had been opened in a rush and dropped accidentally. Inside was a note, a page torn from a journal. Sarah's handwriting, slanted, rushed. Ben doesn't understand what it's like to feel judged by your own mother. He thinks she's hurt, but she's just mad she can't control everything anymore. I needed this day to be about me. Just once. About me. There was no signature, no apology, just justification, wrapped in blame. And suddenly I understood what Ben hadn't said, that he had seen it, clearly, maybe for the first time. The difference between love and loyalty. Between sharing a mother and really seeing her. Later that day he called. She's mad, he said, but not at you, at herself. She just doesn't know how to say it." I didn't respond. "I think," he added quietly, "she's scared of what it means if you stop showing up. Because if you stop, who else will?" The next time I walked past Sarah's wedding folder, I didn't feel sadness. I felt something closer to clarity. I opened it one last time, took out the original guest list I'd helped build, and slid it into the shredder. The paper hissed and disappeared in seconds. Loyalty isn't just about blood, it's about behavior, and if siblings can see that clearly, maybe there's hope for change. But clarity only comes when the pressure rises high enough to pop the bubble, and ours had finally burst. That night, as I sipped tea on the porch, I heard Ben's car slow in front of the house before it drove off again. He didn't come in. He didn't knock. But I saw his silhouette pause in the window. Maybe he just wanted me to know he was still choosing to stand in the right place, even if it meant standing between the people he loved most. There's a moment when every mother realizes her house is no longer a home for the people she built it for, not because they've grown up and moved out, that's expected, but because they've started to rewrite you out of the story that made them. I walked through the hall that morning with coffee in hand, pausing at the family wall. Photos lined the space between the living room and the kitchen: birthdays, graduations, beach trips, Halloween costumes, scraped-knee smiles. I used to pass those photos without thinking. Now I studied them like evidence. In almost every picture I was behind the camera, not missing, just invisible. The house had once been full of voices: Sarah practicing her valedictorian speech, Ben playing guitar in the basement, the sound of shoes kicked off at the door, backpacks thudding to the floor, a fridge opening and closing 10 times in an hour. Now the silence was thick, but it didn't ache the way it used to, because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for them to come back. I was beginning to fill the silence with something else: peace. And it started here, at home. That morning, I began clearing the dining room table. Not just the dishes or the dust, everything. Gone were the wedding folders, the vendor packets, the stack of fabric swatches Sarah had mailed me back when I was still her wedding planner in all but name. I picked up one gold-rimmed invitation sample and ran my thumb along the edge. It read, "Mr. and Mrs. Edward Cross request the honor of your presence at the wedding of their son. No mention of me, not even as a hosting parent, just Jason's people, Jason's name, Jason's future." The trash can opened with a satisfying thud. One by one, the paper pieces of their perfect day landed inside. At noon, I made a sandwich and took it to the back porch. The sun was warm for late March. I ate slowly, watching the trees shift, listening to the wind thread its way through bare branches. There was peace in the stillness, not loneliness, not bitterness, just breathe, just space. This house had been the site of so much giving. I had poured myself into meals, school projects, late-night talks, gift wrap, graduation parties, rent payments, emergency flight tickets, hugs in the kitchen, tears on the couch. It had been a home built not just with brick and wood, but with effort no one had ever itemized, because I never asked them to. And that was the part that finally changed. Ben texted around 2:30 p.m. "Are you home? Can I stop by?" I replied, "Yes." Back porch. When he arrived, he was carrying 2 coffees and a small brown bag. "From that bakery you love," he said. "Lemon scone." I raised an eyebrow. "Are you trying to bribe me?" He grinned, number just trying to show up for once. He sat next to me, and for a moment, we didn't talk. We just watched the wind and shared silence. Finally, he said, "I told Sarah I'm not defending her anymore." I looked at him. "She needs to figure this out herself, and she needs to own how she hurt you. That's not your responsibility." He nodded. "I know, but I had to say it. For me. For you." There was nothing to add. He was no longer trying to fix things. He was standing beside me without expectation, and that meant more than any apology ever could. After he left, I walked back through the house, noticing the small things I'd ignored for years: the creaky floorboard in the hallway, the faded paint on the stair rail, the guest room lamp that flickered when the plug was loose. I made a list. Not for anyone else. For me. Because this home still had value, still had life, even if it no longer housed the version of family I thought I'd have forever. That evening, I made dinner for one and didn't feel sad. I lit a candle just because it smelled like vanilla and old bookstores. I turned on music that had nothing to do with anyone else's tastes. And I sat down to eat without checking my phone for missed calls. It stayed face down the entire meal. By 9 p.m., I was curled up on the couch reading a book I'd started 3 times over the years but never finished. This time, I didn't stop. The story wasn't amazing, but the stillness was. And that's when I realized something I hadn't felt in months, maybe years. This life wasn't empty. It was finally mine. Friendship is a funny thing. It can carry you through heartbreak, help you bury old grudges, and remind you who you were before the world tried to edit you. But it can't fix betrayal, not the kind that's deliberate, not the kind that shows up in your inbox wearing your daughter's name. So when I heard a knock on the door just before sunset, I wasn't expecting company. And I definitely wasn't expecting her. "Grace?" I said, opening the door slowly. She offered a tentative smile. "Hi, Mrs. Monroe. I hope it's okay I came by." I stepped aside and nodded. "It's Eleanor now. You're not 12 anymore." She laughed softly, stepping inside. "Right, force of habit." Grace had been Sarah's best friend from 5th grade until somewhere after college, the kind of girl who knew where we kept the good cookies, who once fell asleep on the living room rug after a movie marathon, who called me second mom, without irony. She looked older now, confident, polished, but still warm. There was something honest in her eyes, not pity, not guilt, just quiet concern. "I won't stay long," she said. I didn't know what else to do. I heard what happened." "You talked to Sarah?" I asked. "Briefly. She's not saying much except that it's all blown out of proportion and that you're being dramatic." She gave me a pointed look, which I don't believe for a second. I raised an eyebrow. "You always were a good reader of people." She sat on the edge of the armchair like she wasn't sure she was allowed to stay. I motioned to the coffee table and brought her a cup of tea without asking. She accepted it with both hands. "This house still smells like cinnamon." We sat in silence for a few moments, the kind that feels full, not awkward. Then she said, "I came to ask one thing, and you don't owe me an answer." I waited. Is there anything she could say that would make this better? I stared into my tea for a long moment. "She didn't just forget me, Grace. She erased me. From her day, from her story, from the photo album she's building for the next chapter of her life." Grace didn't look away. "And the worst part?" I added. "She only noticed after the check didn't clear." Grace nodded slowly. "She's not the same person I grew up with. Not lately. There's something cold in her now. Something that feels like borrowed values." "She's marrying into money," I said flatly, "but she didn't have to sell her memory of me to get it." Grace swallowed hard. "She'll regret this one day." "I won't be there to see it," I said, not bitter, just honest. She stayed for almost an hour. We talked about simpler years, birthday sleepovers, Sarah's obsession with 90s pop music, the time Grace broke her wrist jumping off our back porch trying to prove a dare. "Your freezer still has ice packs in the same spot," she said, smiling. "Muscle memory." Before she left, she stood at the door and looked back at me with something like sadness. "She's losing more than just your money. She doesn't know it yet. But you do." I nodded. And Grace, bless her, didn't try to argue. She didn't offer advice. She didn't beg me to reconsider. She just squeezed my hand and said, "I'm sorry. Not for her, for you." Then she walked away into the night. After she left, I stood at the window, watching her taillights disappear down the hill. My tea had gone cold, but my resolve had never felt warmer. Friendship, even the best kind, can't undo betrayal. But it can remind you that you're not the one who broke it. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my notebook again, the same one where I'd written, "She forgot who raised her." Tonight I added, "And I won't remind her again." There comes a point where repeating yourself becomes begging, and I'd begged my whole life, quietly, invisibly, for consideration, for gratitude, for acknowledgement. No more. By the time I turned out the lights and climbed into bed, my chest felt strangely light. The kind of lightness that comes not from winning, but from releasing. Sarah could rewrite the wedding however she wanted, but the story of who raised her, that part would always belong to me. The wedding venue was supposed to be the crown jewel of Sarah's big day, an estate nestled in the Carolina foothills with white stone terraces, chandeliers imported from Paris, and a price tag that could have covered a small college education. She fell in love with it the second she saw the photos online. I was the one who scheduled the tour, drove out with her to see it, and paid the deposit that secured the date. But now, the venue was slipping through her fingers, and I wasn't the one letting go. On Monday morning, my phone lit up with a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message over coffee. "Hello, this is Veronica from Hillstone Vine Estate. We've attempted to reach Ms. Monroe regarding the balance on her reservation. The final payment deadline was missed, and we've had no follow-up from her or the Cross family. We'll be releasing the date by end of day if we don't receive confirmation." I didn't delete the message. I just replayed it once, then set my phone down and went back to folding laundry. Actions had consequences, and Sarah was finally meeting hers. Later that afternoon, Ben stopped by. No warning, just the soft knock I now associated with him trying not to take sides. "Can I come in?" "You're already in," I said, stepping aside. He held out a folded printout. It was the contract from Hillstone. Sarah's name and mine both listed. Balance due, $27,500. "She tried to wire it," he said, "but Jason's parents are refusing to cover it. They say they paid for the rehearsal dinner and that's enough." "Sounds like a team effort," I said, dry. He sighed. "She asked me to come here and talk to you." "What does she want me to do? Call the venue and pretend this never happened?" "She wants you to understand how important this is." "I did understand," I said calmly. "That's why I paid for it in the first place. She's the one who decided I wasn't important enough to be there." Ben sat at the table. "She thought she could handle it without you. She thought I'd do what I always do, show up, pay up, shut up." He didn't argue. Instead, he told me that Hillstone had issued a final warning. No money, no wedding. They were holding the date until 5 p.m. sharp. After that, it would be released back into the system, and someone else, another bride, another family, would inherit what I'd once made possible. I nodded slowly, then let them have it. "You're sure?" I've never been more sure. At 5:08 p.m., I got a text from Sarah. "It's gone. They gave the date away." No greeting, no punctuation, just a cold fact and an implied accusation. But I didn't reply. There was nothing to say. If I wasn't invited to the wedding, then surely I wasn't responsible for saving it. That night, I stood in the doorway of the guest room, the one where Sarah had stayed for every Thanksgiving and Christmas break through college, the one where I used to set out extra blankets and leave a mug on the nightstand just in case she woke up cold. I opened the closet and found the box of wedding planning materials I hadn't yet thrown out. Inside were vendor brochures, napkin samples, color palette printouts, and taped to the top of the box, in Sarah's handwriting, "Let's make this day unforgettable, Mom." I stared at the note, the soft loops of her script, and felt something flicker. Not pain exactly, just distance. That version of her, the girl who wanted my help, my presence, my input, she was gone, or buried beneath something I couldn't reach anymore. And I wasn't going to dig her out. Ben called again before bed. "They're scrambling," he said, "trying to find a new venue, but most of the good ones are booked." I'm not surprised. She's trying to hold it together, but I think this might break her. "Sometimes things have to break," I said. "That's how you figure out what's worth keeping." I didn't sleep much that night, but I wasn't restless. Just aware. Aware of how far we'd drifted. Aware of how long I'd held things up. Aware that for the first time, I wasn't the one doing the repairing. And it didn't make me feel cruel, it made me feel whole. There's a reason apologies don't always fix what's broken. Sometimes it's because they come too late. Sometimes it's because they're given for the wrong reasons, to ease guilt instead of rebuild trust. And sometimes it's because the person receiving the apology has already moved on. Sarah called me 3 times on Thursday morning. I didn't pick up. She finally left a voicemail. "Mom, I know things have gone off track. I'm not calling to ask for anything. I need to talk to you. Please." There was a tremble in her voice, the kind that used to undo me when she was little, when scraped knees and high fevers and college heartbreaks made her run toward me, not away. But I didn't return her call. Because this wasn't a scraped knee. This was a fracture she helped create, and I wasn't sure she even recognized how deep it ran. Around lunchtime, a car pulled into the driveway. I looked through the front window. Sarah. Alone. I left the door closed. She rang once, then again. Finally, she knocked. "Mom, I know you're in there. Please." I opened the door but didn't step aside. She looked different. Tired. Her makeup was half worn, hair pulled back in a loose bun, no earrings. Not her wedding planning self. Just my daughter, the version I used to know. "Can I come in?" she asked. "I'll stand," I replied. She swallowed hard. "Okay." She stared at the floor for a few moments before speaking. "We lost the photographer," she said, "and the bakery canceled after we didn't pay the deposit. Jason's parents say we should just elope and be done with it." I said nothing. Her voice cracked. "I didn't come here to talk about money or the wedding. I miss you." Still, I didn't speak. She took a breath, looking up at me. "What I did, it was selfish. I see that now. You gave me everything and I treated you like an inconvenience. I'm sorry." I looked at her face. I saw the emotion, the genuine pain. But I didn't feel moved. Because genuine emotion isn't the same as repair, and recognition isn't restoration. "I don't think you understand what you did," I said quietly. "I do," she insisted. "I hurt you." "No," I said. "You erased me." She blinked. "You told me to watch the most important day of your life through a screen. After everything I gave, after everything I built to help get you there, you gave my seat to someone who just married into your life. I thought," she trailed off, "I thought it would be easier." "For who?" "For me," she whispered. And there it was. I stepped outside and sat on the porch bench. She followed, sitting beside me like she had when she was 16, and too proud to say she needed help with her chemistry homework. "I didn't know how to balance it," she said. "Jason's mom wanted control. His family kept saying it should be their vision." "And you gave them everything," I said, "and gave me nothing." She stared at her hands. "I told myself you wouldn't mind, that you'd understand. But I did mind, and you didn't ask." She looked at me again. Are we past fixing this?" I didn't answer right away. Because I didn't know. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "I wrote this," she said, "in case you didn't open the door." I took it but didn't open it. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, "but I wanted to say it out loud, that I see what I did, that I was wrong." I nodded slowly. "Thank you." She stood to leave, her voice barely a whisper. "I love you." I didn't say it back. Not because I didn't mean it, but because love doesn't excuse everything, and right now, I needed her to feel the silence, not as punishment, but as consequence. She walked to her car without turning back. I sat there for a long time, holding the letter but not reading it. Not yet. I knew what it said, and more importantly, I knew what it wouldn't say. Apologies are a start, but they're not healing, not by themselves. That takes time. That takes change. That takes remembering not just what you've done, but who you did it to. The letter sat untouched on the kitchen counter for nearly 2 days. I moved it once to wipe crumbs beneath it. Another time I picked it up intending to open it, only to put it back down again. I told myself I was busy. I told myself it wasn't urgent. The truth was simpler. I wasn't ready, because I already knew reading it wouldn't bring closure, not the kind that made anything whole again, but the kind that reminded me why it had fallen apart in the first place. Sunday morning, I made coffee and sat in the kitchen sunlight. No distractions, no noise, just me, the steam curling upward, and the envelope. I opened it slowly. Sarah's handwriting was familiar, rounded, slightly slanted, the same script from thank you notes and birthday cards she used to leave on the stairs. "Mom, I don't know how to start this because I know I've already ruined the middle. You always said I was stubborn, and I see that now. I clung to the idea of what I thought my wedding should be, and in the process, I let go of the one person who helped me believe I deserved a beautiful life in the first place. That person is you." I paused, breathed in, kept reading. "You taught me how to build a life, how to work hard, how to keep showing up, how to be the one who remembers birthdays and plans dinners and thinks 3 steps ahead. I've watched you do that for everyone, every day, for decades, and I never asked how you were doing. Not really, I just assumed you were fine, because you always looked like you were fine, until I made you invisible." The words landed like soft punches, gentler than rage but still bruising. I let other people's opinions speak louder than your history with me. I told myself it was about logistics, about head counts, about budgets. But it wasn't. It was about fear. Fear that if I stood up for you, I'd be questioned, that I'd lose control of the version of my life I was trying to stage. But Mom, without you there, it doesn't feel like mine at all. I stopped again, looked around the kitchen. It felt like mine. Every mug, every chair, every framed photo I hadn't taken down yet. This space, this peace, this stillness, I'd earned it. And I wasn't sure I wanted to give it up. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm not asking for money or a miracle or even forgiveness. I'm just asking you to hear me. I was wrong. Deeply, terribly wrong. And I miss you in a way that I can't dress up with flowers or a guest list. I miss you like I miss the version of myself that I lost somewhere in trying to impress people who don't even know me. I want to come home, not to live, just to talk, to sit in the kitchen and drink your terrible coffee and laugh about stupid things like we used to. But I understand if that door's closed now. If it is, I'll understand. I'll still love you, even if you can't say it back. Sarah. I folded the letter slowly and placed it back on the counter. She hadn't begged. She hadn't made excuses. She'd written what sounded real. And still, I didn't feel ready to reach back. Not because I didn't care, but because caring doesn't always mean reopening the door. Around noon, I drove into town, ran errands, picked up dish soap and a new bird feeder. I smiled at the cashier. I watched a father and daughter argue over bubblegum at the register, and something small twisted in my chest, but I didn't feel broken. I felt awake. Later that evening, Ben called. "She told me she wrote you a letter," he said. "She did. Did you read it?" "Yes." He waited. Then, "And?" "I believe she meant it," I said, "but I'm not sure that's enough." "Do you want it to be?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. That night I set the table for one again, lit the same candle, poured a glass of wine, and instead of replaying what Sarah wrote, I looked forward to what I might write next, not about her, but about me. Because forgiveness isn't something I owe anyone. It's something I might choose when I know I won't lose myself in the process. If this story touched you, subscribe to Secret Revenge. Because some revenge needs no knives, no screaming, just one spotlight, one shining nameplate, and someone they once dismissed, rising, brilliant, and unshaken. See you in the next story.